The Pentagon budget has now topped $1 trillion. $1 trillion fucking dollars. It is an unbelievable amount of money, and this is getting so little coverage. Stephen Simler has put out an article on it, and some of the reasons is not getting talked about, but he says the idea of a $1 trillion Pentagon budget was hyperbole just a few years ago. It became reality a few days ago once Donald Trump signed the Big Beautiful Bill Act into law. The sweeping legislation adds $156 billion in military spending on top of the $899 billion already approved for 2025. This year's military budget now stands at $1.055 trillion. Remember, if you make $40,000 a year after taxes, to make $1 trillion, you'd have to work for 25 million years. Literally. It is an astronomical amount of money. And of course, there's a massive waste, fraud, neglect, unaccountability in the Pentagon. Here is Stephen Simler's chart on military spending, which is at a historic high. It is now capped, is now beating everything else. It was close in the 2010s. Military spending historic high despite historically low troop deployments. In 2010, it was about as high, but that's when we had a lot of troops overseas. Here's one more chart where Stephen Simler says you could give every American a $600 check if you just took away what has been added to the Pentagon with the big, beautiful bill. He also points out that here are two reasons that the $1 trillion budget is not getting talked about. First, the Trump administration's approach to budgeting has been opaque and ambiguous. It's deliberately misleading. Obtaining basic information is a challenge. Standard budget documents are unavailable, and so is making sense of the information that they do put out. The administration has created confusion about the Pentagon budget because it routinely conflates two different budgetary measures: budgetary authority versus obligations. In May, the administration requested $843 billion for the Pentagon as part of the 2026 spending request, supplemented with $113 billion reconciliation resources, bringing the total to $961 billion. Because this is a request for budget authority, the administration indicated that reconciliation bill funding would first be made available in 2026 and that none would be made available in 2025. The big, beautiful bill says otherwise. Under Title II, each section says the funding is available for 2025. So, they're lying, they're obfuscating, they're covering it up, they're omitting things. They're trying to make it as difficult as possible to figure out what actually is being spent, which I know that will not shock a lot of you. Second reason that this is not getting covered is the media's level of effort. When it comes to military spending, media outlets generally report the numbers that are provided to them by government officials. If those numbers aren't provided, they generally don't get reported on, and it's easy to see why. Consider the level of effort that went into determining that this year's military budget had crossed the $1 trillion mark, which Stephen Simler went to that effort, but your average media would not. This isn't what I'd call heroic effort, but it was painful and time-consuming. First, read the text of the legislation for earlier this year that had set 2025 military spending levels. Analyze the accompanying documentation from the CBO. Calculate the pre-Big Beautiful Bill total, $899 billion, by taking the sum of regular military spending, $892 billion, and emergency military spending, $6.6 billion. Read the text of the Big Beautiful Bill, recording and tallying each military spending provision. Checked my numbers against the CBOs. Determine the total 2025 military budget, $1.055 trillion, by taking the sum of the military spending in the big bill, $156 billion, and the pre-Big Beautiful Bill amount, $899 billion. All of that had to be done to figure out that the Pentagon's budget now tops $1 trillion. And of course, our media is not going to do that. Our mainstream media, our corporate media, they are funded by the same entities that create the missiles. So of course, they're not going to spend time announcing that we are now over $1 trillion military budget. This is a waning, collapsing empire. Spend more on money, give less to your people. The people suffer more. The Americans suffer more. People overseas suffer more as we continue wars and funding and arming various factions around the world, killing innocent people on a daily basis. Of course, the genocide in Gaza being the prime example. All of the waste, fraud, and criminality in the Pentagon that I've been covering for years. The $21 trillion of unaccounted for financial adjustments. That was just over a 15-year span. The 100,000 whistleblower complaints within the Pentagon. Not all of those are financial, but some of them are. All ignored. 100,000, literally 100,000 complaints in the Pentagon. They failed 7 audits. And in the last one, they said they can't account for 63% of their assets at the Pentagon. 63%. They literally don't know their assets from their elbows. They can't even account for how many people work at the Pentagon. Defense Secretary Gates, when he said he was going to, solve all these problems and get everyone to make everything accountable, and he failed to do so. And on his way out, in his final press conference, he said, literally, we couldn't find out how many people work in an office in the Pentagon. Like, can't find out anything in the Pentagon. He admitted that on his way out. So just unbelievable. They literally don't know where warehouses are. They're missing whole platoons of Black Hawk helicopters. I didn't realize they're not called platoons, but it is unfathomable. In Iraq, $13 billion. Was it 12 or $13 billion? Who's counting? It's a rounding error. $12 billion just goes missing like printed dollars, saran wrap printed dollars. That's what our military is. Giant fraud. Matthew Ho comes back from Afghanistan. He's now an amazing human being who has revealed what it's like there and is against our military-industrial complex. Wonderful human being. And but while he was over there, said, "Yeah, I was given money to just give out in Afghanistan. There was no accountability for it. The most I had at a time in my safe in my room was I don't remember the number, but I know it's over $1 million, at least $1 million. Maybe it was a few $1 million in like saran wrap money that he just give out because the Pentagon thought that giving money to warlords and things was going to help solve their problems. But there was no accountability. Matthew Ho could have been sticking that stuff in his pants. He didn't, but no accountability. And so now we're over $1 trillion. Woo! All right. Just wanted to bring you that segment, and I will be back to my regular schedule in August. Also, Unredacted Tonight came out recently. It's available at leakcamp.net or youtube.com/momentofclarity. And I will see you soon. Keep fighting.